Looks like we have a full house today, colleagues, so I know we'll be on our best behavior. And a special welcome to the students of Laurentide La Belle. And Madame Gaudreau, welcome. I've served with her on committee, a terrific member of Parliament. I hope that helps with your constituents, Madame Gaudreau. But all party support. And let me start, as we always do, by acknowledging that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. Welcome to meeting 34 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. And today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format, as we have one of our colleagues online. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4 and the motion adopted on Thursday, March 26, 2026, the committee is commencing consideration of the main estimates of 2026-27 referred to the committee on Thursday, February 26, 2026. And pursuant to Standing Order 81-5 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, the committee is commencing consideration of the subject study matter of the Supplementary Estimate C 2025-2026 referred to the committee on Thursday, February 12th, 2026. Pursuant to the motion adopted on December 4th, 2025, the committee shall resume its study of management of Canadian nuclear laboratories by U.S. Companies. I know that was scintillating, colleagues, and got through it as quickly as I could. And let me now welcome our witnesses, and a special welcome, of course, to the Honourable Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. And we have just about the whole family from Natural Resources Canada with us today. Welcome. And I have to name you as they may be asked questions by members of Parliament. Greg Orenchak, Deputy Minister. Jeff Labonte, Associate Deputy Minister. Claudine Paget, Director General, Minerals Program Branch, Lands and Minerals Sector. Francis Brisson, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Management and Services Sector. Frank Desrosiers, Assistant Deputy Minister, Energy Efficiency and Technology Sector. Glenn Hargrove, Assistant Deputy Minister, Canadian Forest Service. Kimberly Lavoie, Assistant Deputy Minister. Nok Wewashak, if I pronounced that correctly. Drew Leyburn, Assistant Deputy Minister, Energy Systems Sector. Aaron O'Brien, Assistant Deputy Minister, Fuels Sector. And I'll be introducing others in the second round. But Minister, again, welcome, and you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Bonjour à tous. Merci
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. I also want to note that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. The main estimates are being considered by the committee today are a blueprint for how we build energy security, strengthen our sovereignty and our economy, and ensure that every region of Canada can succeed. Because we're living through a global rupture, an even more tumultuous time than when I last appeared before this committee. Since then, the conflict in the Middle East has driven up fuel prices around the world. We have contributed to the IEA's largest ever oil stock release, and our government has acted to temporarily suspend the fuel excise tax on gasoline and diesel across Canada, bringing the total amount of taxes cut on a litre of gasoline to 28 cents since we were first elected. To make Canada more energy secure and less reliant on external factors, our government is also working to realize Canada's full potential in both clean and conventional energy. We're building big in electricity, in LNG and nuclear to provide all Canadians with clean, reliable, and affordable power. At the same time, supply chains continue to shift. The global demand for energy and minerals is rising, and our allies are looking to Canada as a stable, responsible trading partner. To illustrate how we're responding to this need and diversifying Canadian exports beyond the United States, I would like to highlight a few examples contained in these estimates which respond to these issues with clarity and purpose. First, this year's estimates include a total commitment of $2.3 billion to unlock the infrastructure, the technology, and the processing capacity needed to turn Canada's critical mineral wealth into a long-term opportunity for this country. This will strengthen our economic security by fulfilling domestic defense, manufacturing, and clean energy demand, and getting minerals to new global markets. Second, with over $392 million sought for the Smart, Renewable, and Electrification Pathway Program, we are modernizing Canada's grid so that power remains affordable, clean, and resilient. We're also taking significant steps to further support our forest sector as it pivots to new products and markets, including $157 million for our suite of forest sector transformation programs. With the conclusion of the Canadian Forest Sector Transformational Task Force's mandate this past week, our government will be responding to their report by setting out our vision for the sector. I look forward to having more to say about our ambition to pivot and grow the forest sector in the coming weeks. At the same time, our new government and the Natural Resources Canada are collectively taking fiscal responsibility, and the Prime Minister's promise to spend less so we can invest more with the utmost seriousness. That's why it's worth noting that even as we deliver for more Canadians, the 2026-2027 Natural Resources Canada budget is seeking $4.8 billion in budgetary authorities, a decrease of 5% from last year. Mr. Chair, all Canadians feel the urgency of this moment. Business as usual will not meet the scale of what workers and their families expect from us, given the challenges and the opportunities we face. To make good on what we have promised to Canadians, we must be bold and move forward with purpose. Our new Liberal government's approach to energy and natural resources means we are thinking bigger, building smarter, and moving faster as one country with one economy and one shared future. I look forward to your questions. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. We're now going to open it up to questions, comments from members, and we're going to start with Mrs. Stubbs. Mrs. Stubbs, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here, and to your officials for joining you here today. Minister, when will the construction of your promised pipeline to the Pacific begin?
So to be clear, I believe you're referring to the pipeline to the Pacific that Alberta is proposing. So it's not our pipeline. It's being proposed by the province of Alberta as a proponent. And what they have indicated is they would be ready by July 1st to bring a proposal forward. At that time, we would be evaluating. And of course, the proponent is the one who brings it forward. So it's up to them to bring it forward at that point.
But you've made the agreement to all Canadians. You want Canada to be an energy superpower. A pipeline to the Pacific is necessary to get beyond the U.S. So on what date will the Pacific pipeline start getting built?
As I said, we don't build the pipelines. The proponents build the pipelines. It's up to the proponent to bring a proposal forward. My understanding is Alberta intends to meet its
So as you know, the proponents who would build that pipeline have said you have to repeal anti-energy laws, regulations, policies for them to be able to build that pipeline. You said you want to do that after C5. So how quickly will you get those laws fixed so that you can tell Canadians the date on which the pipeline that you promised to the Pacific will be constructed?
So as you well know, the federal government and the government of Alberta have a plan together to work collectively in collaboration with a shared goal.
So what are you doing to get the private sector proponent who will build the pipeline to the Pacific that you promised Canadians would get built, and in under 2 years, given the language around C5?
So we are working with Alberta and with the Pathways Alliance.
But on what date?
When the proponent brings it forward.
So there is no proponent, there is no pipeline, and you have no date. That sounds so
Alberta-
far like you're not
Alberta-
going to meet the promise you made. So I guess we'll
Alberta
move
has
on.
indicated they plan to be a proponent. The government
But
is not
you and
the
your
proponent.
Prime Minister have promised to make Canada an energy superpower. You say Canada is in a crisis because of our biggest trading partner, customer, and competitor who is threatening Canada. We need to get beyond those markets. You have promised the pipeline to the Pacific. That's an interjurisdictional pipeline for export, indisputably federal jurisdiction. So on what date will you want a private sector proponent to begin construction on the Pacific pipeline that you promised Canadians, of which the majority want to be built?
I know you'd like a different answer. The answer is the same. The proponent brings the proposal forward.
And the proponents have said they won't build a pipeline unless you change the laws. So when are you changing the laws?
Just like the proponent for the Taylor to Gordondale pipeline brought it forward, and it was approved, and they are now building. And just like the...
So we're more than a year in and you have no answer. Okay, so let's move on. On April 17th, 2025, the Prime Minister, as you well know, said China is Canada's greatest security threat. So just as Minister, I wonder, do you support more control of Canada's oil and gas by foreign regime-owned companies?
I believe what the Prime Minister said is we need to engage with the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. And
on
that
April
we need,
17th,
and that
he
we
was
need,
asked what is Canada's greatest security threat. His answer was China.
And what, if you let me answer, I will
It's
try
about
to
time
do
for
that.
time.
Yeah, let's not talk over one another, please. Minister?
Well, my first question was 10 seconds, and he did go for 35. So if you want to adjudicate like that, you go ahead, Chair. Or I'm going to have to.
Minister, proceed.
So what we said is China is the second largest trading country in the world. It is an important trading partner. We had a paused relationship with China. We are rebuilding our relations with China. We have a pragmatic engagement where we have a clear window in areas where we agree and areas where we don't agree.
So let me just ask you about one of the projects that you recently did refer to the MPO, that road, the Grays Bay project that leads to this Chinese state-owned Isaac mine. Now, you said Arctic security is a top priority. Conservatives have always said that. We agree. Does your government view this as a national security concern? And can you answer whether or not that mine has been designated for a national security review under the Investment Canada Act or by the MPO, which your legislation also seems to set out to be their role? The MPO.
The Grays Bay Port and Road is a national security priority. It is a development in the Arctic priority. It is an economic priority. There are many, many deposits along that road. Many, many potential proponents will be bringing things forward. To my knowledge, the company that I think you're referring to has not come forward and proposed a mine. If it did propose a mine, we would look at it at that time.
Is it just easy for you to rule out, as minister concerned about Canada's security and sovereignty, that you would rule out? Can I just actually finish my question?
Okay, sure.
Would you rule out majority Chinese ownership of Canadian resource development, say in oil and gas or critical minerals?
So what we have is we have the Investment Canada Act. We have the ability to look at any new investment in the country. We'll evaluate it against the realities of the time, and if we deem it a net benefit to Canada, it would proceed.
But
we have Chinese ownership.
Threat.
China's a major owner in LNG Canada 1. In that situation,
is it a threat?
Folks, that's the time for this round. I'm going to go on to Mr. Clark for 6 minutes. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Minister, and officials as well. Thank you very much for being here today, this afternoon. Minister, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that's come up during the course of our study on energy exports are issues around regulatory certainty and simplicity. And I know that's something that yourself and the Prime Minister and the government have been very focused on as well since the election last year. One of the key pieces of that is to sign cooperation and substitution agreements with as many provinces and territories as possible. I know my own province of Nova Scotia signed one about a month ago when the Prime Minister was in Halifax with Premier Houston. So, Minister, could you just give us an update on where those agreements stand and the positive impact you think they will have on the energy future of the country?
Yeah. You're referring to the one project, one review?
Yes.
Okay. So in addition to establishing the Major Projects Office, and the work is underway to secure cooperation agreements with each and every province, as we've talked about, province and territory, to establish the concept of one project, one review. To date, 7 agreements have been signed. Those agreements are with Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, and there is an existing one with BC from when we started this process. One additional jurisdiction has a draft working document, and 2 are close to having draft agreements developed or finalized.
And Minister, what would you say is the primary benefit for not just governments, but more importantly for, as you talked about in the previous round, proponents and people who want to do business here in the country to have those agreements in place?
So one of the things we've heard very clearly from proponents is they would like to see a depancaking of regulation. Where there is overlapping federal and provincial or territorial regulation, they'd like to see those collapsed into one set of engagements around regulation, one set of consultations. And so the concept of one project, one review says where the federal government has an agreement with a province that there is an equivalency of their regulations, the federal government will step aside. So we will rely on the work that the provincial government does. If they do that work, we will conclude they've done the equivalent of what we would do, and we will step aside. The most, I think, poignant example of that is actually the Silesons LNG facility, where last fall the BC government approved what will be the second largest private sector investment in the history of the country, a over $30 billion new export facility. That project was approved on a Monday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon by the BC government. And at 4:30 that same day, the federal government approved it, relying on the work of the BC government. When one project, one review works properly, that's what we should see happen.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. And having been on the provincial side, I know that it's wonderful when we can work together and simplify and harmonize those things, as you say. Minister, another priority, I think, would be around electricity. So we know that demand for electricity over the next couple of decades is likely going to double here in Canada, and we will need to work together again with provinces, territories, Indigenous groups to modernize and expand the supply and distribution of electricity in this country. Could you share for us what work is underway in the department and what investments might be included in the estimates that will help us meet that significant demand over the next 10 to 20 years?
Thank you for that great question. We're working with provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners more closely than ever to better connect our grids from east to west and provide more affordable and reliable power for Canadians. This builds on the significant existing federal commitments in investment tax credits, in strategic financing, and in targeted programs. Of note is NRCan's total commitment of $4.5 billion from 21 to 22 fiscal year to the 2035 to 2036 fiscal year to support the deployment of grid modernization, energy storage, and renewable energy and transmission projects across Canada, and pre-development and capacity building projects helping communities and organizations develop renewable energy and grid modernization projects. And we're just getting started. We will be announcing a new electricity strategy in the coming weeks, and I'll have more to say about this then.
Wonderful. And I wonder, you touched on in your response there about storage. And I think storage is an underappreciated but critically important part of the electricity question that we're raising here, because we talk about renewables, and obviously that's going to be an increasingly important part of the mix in the years and decades to come. But renewables at times are intermittent, solar and wind obviously being the true prime examples of that. So from your perspective, Minister, how important is storage, and how can we continue to accelerate that so we can actually harness that energy that is not always as reliable as more traditional sources? You
have about 30 seconds.
Sure. So as you know, grid-scale storage is an important part of developing DERs in the new system, the new grid systems we're building. We've been working with different provincial utilities to look at ways to do that in the most cost-effective way. We've also been exploring what other countries around the world are doing. When I was in China and in India, we looked at some of the exceptional grid storage capabilities they have, and we've looked at potentially bringing that technology to Canada.
Thank you. Thank you both. Monsieur Simard, 6 minutes, allez-y.
Merci
Mr. Simard,
beaucoup.
you have 6 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you, Minister. Mr. Hodgson, you're a figures person, a numbers person, a banker. So I'd like to come back to talk about the building of the pipeline that will be will have Alberta as a proponent. We had interesting witness this week, Mr. Harry Johnson, who said that given that the construction costs of a pipeline to the west were very high, he felt it was unlikely that industry favor that solution. So what he's telling us is that probably there would have to be public money going into the pipeline construction. Alberta has already been signaling that by being the proponent. And the issue that concerns me is to know whether the federal government will invest in that infrastructure. So I saw Trans Mountain go by $34 billion for the oil and gas sector, and infrastructure that's not sustainable. Even Mr. Johnson told us that wasn't the case. So my question is quite simple. As a banker, do you believe that a pipeline to the west is sustainable, will be profitable, and will there be public funds from the federal government for this infrastructure?
Shall I proceed? Thank you very much for the question. I don't know, Mr. Johnson, the characterization that the cost will be very high is an incredible amount of detail to absorb. I think we can look at the actual reality that the TMX pipeline is full. It is already ready to be expanded. There is demand for it to be expanded using the tolls that are in place designed to pay for that pipeline. So clearly there is a commercial demand for pipelines to the West Coast. What I can tell you as I went around the world, many countries and also companies were very keen to buy more Canadian oil off the West Coast. They would be thrilled if there was an opportunity to do that. With respect to public money, I want to be clear. What we have said is that we would support Indigenous equity ownership with the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program. So there could be scenarios where public money could be used in a pipeline where it was supporting Indigenous ownership of that pipeline.
Ça reste quand même assez évasif.
That is kind of elusive, the amount of public money that can be put into this infrastructure. We don't know. And Mr. Johnson is a specialist of market research for the oil and gas sector. I think he knows his field well. I would like to hear a clear commitment of the government that we won't repeat the experience we had with Trans Mountain government pipeline, where the government assumed the costs for the infrastructure and the private sector did not want to. I understand that the Alberta government is ready to take part in this, but there will be an injustice. All the infrastructures for transmission of electricity in Quebec was paid by Hydro-Québec, so the federal government did not come into that. And so Quebec resented the fact that the electrical infrastructure in Newfoundland was subsidized by the federal government. And so if we were doing that with the pipelines in Alberta, that would be not perceived very well by the Quebec government.
About pipelines when the proponent brings one forward. In the MOU that was negotiated with Alberta, it was a clear priority of that MOU that any pipeline that was brought forward would have Indigenous ownership. If those Indigenous owners wanted support from the federal government to finance their equity, that would be available under the Canadian Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program. With all due respects, I believe Hydro-Quebec does benefit from investment tax credits, so saying that Quebec does not benefit...
Tout à fait. Je vous parle des infrastructures.
I'm talking about infrastructure only. I understand about the 30%. I'm just thinking about infrastructures in the past.
Quebec benefits from investment tax credits, and I would say as a banker, a dollar is fungible, whether it's an ITC or it's an Indigenous loan guarantee. A dollar is a fungible.
Thank you both. And colleagues, we're going to start our second round, and we are going to start that round with Mr. Tucker. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you,
5
Chair,
minutes.
and thank you for the witnesses. Minister, you've been ducking out of this committee for months now, and you're here, and I'm grateful that you are. But for this hour, we're supposed to go through the supplement estimates, the main estimates of 26-27, and then another hour of management of the Canadian nuclear laboratories by U.S. companies. So I will have 5 minutes to ask you questions about this important Canadian jewel in our nuclear industry that is being sold out, the management of, to an all-American-owned company group of companies. How big of a role did the Prime Minister have in putting together the government's policy on nuclear?
Zero.
So the Liberals have proclaimed a Buy Canada policy. How does that line up with selling out the controls of our nuclear labs to the Americans, and the Prime Minister has had zero input in this policy?
So the premise of your question is I think, flawed. The management of the nuclear assets is done by contract. There's a structure where it's done by contract.
I'm sorry, sir. That's not about the question. The question was, the first question was about nuclear labs, and you said that the Prime Minister had zero impact on the policy. Now, on the Buy Canada,
no, let's not misquote me. I didn't say
Canada.
Zero impact. I said zero involvement. Let's be clear. He had zero involvement.
So if he didn't have involvement, but he had impact?
No, he had zero involvement.
Which companies would have you met with on developing the nuclear policy then?
Are we talking about the nuclear strategy, or are we talking about...
All things nuclear here, sir. We were supposed to have you for an hour, and I got now 4 minutes.
Okay. Well,
So
I'm
which
happy to
companies
answer
have
your
you been
question. You just
discussing?
got to be clear what the question is.
Well, the first question was on the Buy Canadian
Yeah.
policy of the government, and obviously you're ignoring that by going with a Buy All-American-owned group of companies. And
No,
you talked about the
no,
Prime Minister
that's
had
not-
zero impact, you said, or influence. And I wanted to know, on the third question was, which companies have, though? Who have you been meeting with?
Okay, I'm confused what your question... Are we talking about
Which
the nuclear
companies in
strategy?
the nuclear industry have you been meeting with in the last 10 months? You can
have-
get back to me on a written submission if that's you agree to.
I've met with many, many companies. I'm happy to get you a written, if that's,
All right.
if that's helpful. But I'm happy to talk about it now, too, if you'd like.
Well, can you talk about how this is not goes against Buy Canadian when you buy American?
So we're conflating nuclear strategy and labs. So if we want to talk, let's talk about the management of the labs. That is done by AECL. They decide as an independent crown what is the most cost-effective way.
We went through this. The board that the Liberals applied for, the board that made that decision was 100% appointed by Liberals. So it is the Liberal government.
It's a crown corporation where their fiduciary duty is to act independently. They ran a process.
So square how Buy Canadian is supposed to work then? If they're all independent, are they not following your Buy Canadian policy?
The way it works when you go out for tender, I mean, I've done this many, many, many times. You go out for tender, you get a series of tenders in. You evaluate those tenders against the criteria. You go back with another set of questions and demands in your negotiation. Some people fall away. You keep negotiating. Again, people fall away. At the end, there is one entity left.
I have limited time, sir, on the processes then. If you want to talk about how they excluded Canadian,
there was no Canadians excluded.
CNL
from the VP
informed that the committee that one of the requirements for a successful bid for the GoCo was experience that meant a winning bid had to come from outside of Canada. You rigged the bidding process so that a non-Canadian companies would receive this.
So the premise of your question is just fundamentally wrong. The ownership of the assets.
It's the man.
The ownership of the assets remains with Canada. The people who are managing it, 99% of them are in Canada and are Canadian.
But 100% owned by the Americans, and that's the concern that I have. Another important part, though.
So
this is my time. Okay. I only got 5 minutes of an hour that was promised to me.
You actually only have 15 seconds.
Then I'll close with this then. Would it be easier? So you've been briefed on a whole bunch of nuclear, obviously. You're very knowledgeable, sir. Would you be easier to build a new heavy water plant or build a domestic enrichment capacity for uranium in Canada?
A brief answer,
Which one would be?
Minister.
I'm not sure what easier to build one versus I'm not sure in what context.
So we're going to need more heavy water in the future, and we're going to also need enriched uranium. Both come from outside of Canada. And you as the minister are not aware of which one we're going to build first, or which one's going to be tougher, or what one's going to be cost more money, is concerning for most people in nuclear.
We can come back to that.
I don't think that's what I said. But
move on to Mr. Danko for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
The nuclear theme, because this is a really important sector for Ontario in particular. And Canada is a leader in nuclear technology, which has the potential to help us meet our growing demand for clean, carbon-free electricity across the country. So my first question, Minister, is kind of big picture. How do you see nuclear fitting into Canada's energy production on a broad scale?
Great question. Thank you. So just to start at the most macro level, there are 4 or 5 countries in the world that would be characterized as tier 1 nuclear capable countries, meaning they can go from the start of the chain in terms of mining the uranium to using their own reactor technology to generate, and all the stages in between. Canada is one of those very few countries that is a tier 1 nuclear country. It's built on the backs of a huge number of Canadian scientists, of Canadian workers, of Canadian miners, and some great can-do technology. We are also the second largest uranium producer in the world and hold the largest high-grade deposits globally, which is a key part of expanding our exports to countries such as India, where we just signed a $2.6 billion supply agreement. And in just the past few months, the CNSC has approved 2 new uranium mining projects in this gentleman's home province of Saskatchewan in the Athabasca Basin, the Denison Mine Wheeler River Project, and the Next Gen Energy Rook I project, both of which will support continued investment in Canada's nuclear fuel sector. The Patterson Lake South Uranium Mining Project is also under regulatory review with the CNSC right now, which hopefully there'll be good news on that coming soon. When it comes to deploying nuclear reactors, we are making historic investments in Canada's nuclear sector, including a $2 billion investment through the Canada Growth Fund for the Darlington new nuclear project, which will be the first small modular reactor built in the G7, helping to deploy investment across Canada's nuclear supply chain, which is one of the best in the world. We've also launched government-to-government discussions with Poland, where I was in the spring, as a potential adopter of Canada's CANDU technology for their second nuclear power plant site. At the same time, we're working on a nuclear strategy that will lay out our vision to attract billions of dollars of investment and position Canada to continue to be a leader in nuclear innovation.
Thank you, Minister. Really great to hear that momentum in the nuclear sector, especially that our government is taking action to benefit all areas of Canada, including Saskatchewan. Second question is, in your opening statement, you spoke about us being at a rupture in our global geopolitical stage and having the need for Canada to take a leadership role. And that is highlighted by the disruption of the global energy markets due to the war in the Middle East and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So can you elaborate on what Canada is doing to respond to help bring down prices at the pumps and to increase Canada's energy security?
Sure. So since coming into office a year ago, our government, as has been noted, has cut taxes by 28 cents per liter, is helping Canadians deal with this reality. We didn't ask for this war, but we have to deal with it. And that includes the 10-cent cut in fuel excise taxes, which took effect this past Monday. Canada's role right now is to bring relief to energy supply shocks that we're all currently experiencing as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. We're supporting the International Energy Agency's largest ever oil stock release by producing 23.6 million additional barrels of crude oil through both incremental production and delays of turnarounds at Canadian facilities. This demonstrates the importance of investment in energy infrastructure that has been made. For instance, the expansion of the TMX has meant that Canada increased oil exports through this pipeline by 100% relative to 2024 levels. The Trans Mountain pipeline has proposed a further 10% increase in capacity through a series of 3 optimization projects. Construction is expected to begin this August, and that project could be operational by as early as January of 2027.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you both. And we're going to move on now to Monsieur Simard. 2.5 minutes.
You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Terry. So I wanted to see the guaranteed loans program for Indigenous people went from $5 to $10 billion in March 2025, and we're told that they go up to projects worth up to $1 billion. So with a pipeline, if there were several proponents, we could have a form of support from the federal government that could go up to $10 billion. Did I understand the situation properly?
I believe per proponent, there is up to $1 billion. Yes, that is correct.
Oui. Merci. Donc, un potentiel de...
Thank you. So, a potential of $10 billion. So I want to come back to the agreement you have with Alberta. If we look at it more closely, we can see that there's a ceiling of the price of pollution to $100 per ton. And what I had read on the Alliance pathway that said for carbon capture and sequestration to be profitable, the price of the ton had to be between $150 and $160. So if Alberta wants to set this at $130, then it's better for businesses to have strategies for carbon capture and sequestration. So I'm asking you, because you're a banker here, so there's no longer a business case for carbon capture and sequestration.
I don't think your characterization is accurate. We're in the middle of ongoing discussions. The MOU is clear that it is a package, and the proponent agrees that for the pipeline to move forward, the Pathways project would move forward. The carbon pricing formula that is being discussed between the federal government and the Alberta government would obviously be required to make the Pathways project economically viable. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would not bet against Canadian technology. I have watched in my career, having worked with many clean and conventional energy companies, I have watched how Canadian technology has systematically reduced the carbon footprint of our production. When I was at Meg Energy, I watched how new technologies reduce the carbon footprint of each barrel produced by 30%. I think as years go by, we will see more and more.
Je veux juste finir, simplement pour point
simply for information here. In the pathway, we would be able to capture 95% of the emissions, and there's no project anywhere in the world that's able to do this.
Merci, Monsieur Simon.
Mr. Martel for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I want to talk about natural gas because we know that Canada must be its best client, top client in terms of natural gas. So I would like to know what is the development for responding to energy needs of the east of Canada as well as our allies on the other side of the Atlantic.
Je ne suis pas.
Resources in eastern energy resources in eastern Canada.
On a des besoins aussi dans
we need natural gas in the east of Canada, and I wanted to know the situation for other countries because you're saying Canada will be a good client, but for Europe, are there any developments to respond to the needs for natural gas in the eastern region? So there are some projects in the north, in the Arctic, that will represent needs.
Natural gas is. I think that's what you're asking. What I can tell you is when I was in Europe, in a number of meetings I've had, we have had strong expressions of interest from multiple EU countries, from multiple non-EU countries in Asia. Trying to be discreet here, Asia Minor, and multiple non-EU countries in Europe who are interested in our natural gas. I can tell you it's commercially sensitive, but several of those countries are in the process of inking contracts with different Canadian projects today.
Est-ce qu'il y aurait possibilité qu'il y ait des
Is there
projets?
a possibility that there might be a LNG project in the east that would go out in Europe to Europe?
Again, that would be from a proponent. We don't decide if there's an LNG project in the east. What we do is if there's a proponent who comes forward and says they want to do it and they have the support of the local jurisdiction and they have support of Indigenous peoples, then yes. What we see today is Nova Scotia very clearly wanting to develop its natural gas resources. Premier Houston has been very clear.
Monsieur le ministre, si je vais dans le secteur forestier.
Minister, if I talk about the forestry sector, we know that after several decades of disputes and temporary agreements, I would like it if you could explain to the forestry workers in my region, in the Saguenay, how can it be that government has not yet been able to find a durable solution, a sustainable solution with the Americans on softwood?
So as someone who grew up in a forestry town and knows what it's like to be in a small town where the mill closes, I understand the challenges of the constituents in your riding. The reality is we can't control what the Americans do. We have had free trade since the 1980s in this country in almost all goods. Unfortunately, with respect to forest products, we're in our fifth trade war with the Americans. We have gone to the World Trade Organization. We've gone to the adjudication routes through the different free trade agreements that we've had. We have won every time, and the Americans continue to hoist upon us unjust and unfair and illegal tariffs. What's the old saying? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. The reality of our situation, unfortunately, is the way the money politics works in the United States. The U.S. forest lobby is never going to give us free trade in forest products. So we need to retool our industry. That's why we launched the Transformational Task Force, and we worked with all of industry to come up with a plan to pivot the industry, which as I mentioned in my remarks, we got that report.
Les pertes économiques actuelles liées à ce litige-là.
So there's an impact on the productivity of our sector. I think we should be able to reach to an agreement. Have you thought about the figures?
Quick answer.
Have I thought about what? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear your...
Non, c'est que je voulais savoir, est-ce que vous
I
avez...
wanted to know if you have estimated the value of the annual losses connected to this dispute, the impact on competitiveness.
Is in this current illegal set of tariffs the Americans are posing, they have now collected a little, I believe it's somewhere between $10 and $12 billion of unfair and unjust tariffs. And they're holding Canadian producers hostage with that tariff money.
Thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, I've had a conversation with Mr. Clark. He's agreed to cede some of his time for me. That is the chair's prerogative, which I will use today. I use it rarely. Minister, I'm aware that you spent a good part of your life in Manitoba. I'm from Manitoba, as you know, and you're very familiar with the Port of Churchill, Canada's only deep water port in the north. You're also aware that we have been studying energy exports as well as critical minerals and their potential for our country. Churchill is listed as a strategic priority by the Government of Canada, and I wonder if you could say a little bit about your vision for the Port of Churchill and how it might fit in terms of diversifying our trade and realizing the potential of our energy and critical mineral resources.
Thank you, and I will admit to being a Bombers fan.
What about the Jets?
The Jets, they weren't around when I was a kid, but I am a Jets fan, yes. The Port of Churchill Plus was referred to the major projects offices as an early-stage transformative strategy because of its potential to expand northern export capacity, enhance Arctic sovereignty, and contribute to increased and diversified trade with Europe and other partners, as you well know, Mr. Chair. As you also know, the MPO is working closely with Manitoba, with the government of Manitoba, with Indigenous partners, and with industry to unlock the port's full potential, which could include an all-weather road, an upgraded rail line, marine ice-breaking capacity, and potential new energy export opportunities, including for LNG and other petroleum products. LNG is key to Canada's status as an energy superpower, and we've set ambitious goals for the industry for 2030 and beyond, and Churchill could well play a part in that. With the Canada-Manitoba One Project, One Review agreement signed this week, well done, we're creating the conditions for nation-building infrastructure to advance in Manitoba.
Thank you, Minister. We'll go to Mr. Clark, and you have 2 minutes and 37 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, as we get into spring and the weather continues to warm, we know that we're entering into wildfire season, and we know that wildfires across the country are becoming increasingly severe and dangerous. You know, growing up in Nova Scotia, wildfires were not really part of life for us. And then 3 years ago, I remember being in my backyard and looking up at the sun and thinking it looked a little strange, a little red, a little unusual. And then all of a sudden we had a fire just down the road from us, 200 plus homes destroyed overnight, miraculously, no lives lost. But it's something that coast to coast to coast we are dealing with in this country. So I wonder if you could give us an update on what the department is doing to strengthen the aerial wildfire response capacity of this country.
Thank you for the question. It's a very important question, and as we come on fire season again, it's very poignant. As you know, we continue to make significant investments to support wildfire management across the country and build Canada's capacity to respond to fires to enhance community safety. In the main estimates, you'll find that we're increasing funding by $70 million to prepare and strengthen our response to wildfires. This brings our total funding to $629.8 million through 2030. This will support the procurement of equipment and 4 aerial water bombers. It will procure firefighting training for the provinces and incorporate Indigenous knowledge into fire management.
In particular, the water bombers is a critical piece. I know there have been some situations in Atlantic Canada, for example, where we've had to kind of shuttle them back and forth between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. To enhance that capacity is critical. When it comes to critical minerals, which has been mentioned already, we know that's going to be one of the major, if not the critical natural resource of the 21st century. Canada is a top 5 producer of 11 critical minerals. We have the reserves, we have the projects, we have the expertise to become a leading producer. Can you share, Minister, what the government is doing to grow the critical mineral sector and attract investment in that really, really important industry?
Yes, and thanks for the question, and it is incredibly important. And as we all think about that vignette of President Trump lecturing President Zelensky about how he has no cards, I think every night about, as I go to bed, how do I make sure we have the very best cards we can? And some of our very best cards are our critical minerals. Because quite frankly, Canada has what the world needs. Our critical minerals are strategic assets that are important to our national and economic security, but also to our allies' national and economic security, and that puts cards in our hands. We're committed to constructive engagement with the U.S. to build a new economic and security relationship using our critical minerals. At the same time, we're taking a leadership role through the Critical Minerals Production Alliance to deepen our existing critical mineral cooperation with allies around the world to respond to deliberate market manipulation by other countries. So far, as part of our efforts to rally all of our allies, we've announced 56 different partnerships with every one of our G7 allies, including, and I'll get the list not completely right, but I think Denmark, Norway, Finland, Japan, Australia. There's a couple of others in there. But
thank you, Minister. That's That's our time with you today. Really appreciate your testimony and responding to questions. Thank you, colleagues, for your exchanges. Minister, I think you've seen a variety of views around the table. That's quite normal, but this committee is working very well together, and we thank you. I'm going to finish.
Before he's point of order though is Minister, when are you going to come back and complete the nuclear study for the full hour?
That's not a point of order. So.
But a good answer right now, right?
Yeah, that's not a point of order, and we will suspend while we set up the next panel.
Okay, so like I said, we're going to switch over to ethics. Let me just pull that up here. Dun, 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 dun. And because this was live while we were watching the Resources Committee, we can skip through a couple of the Liberal rounds and then get to the live part. Let me get this.
Review. I was talking to the committee clerk beforehand, and this is the third time over the last 20 years that I've appeared on the lobby. But it's on the radar rules, so you don't have two events that throwing away.
Consistently agreed that public.
Holy crap! How long have opening
questioning the
statements?
witnesses.
Oh, there we go. We just missed the con round.
Our message today is straightforward. Transparency is best served when the
I have
act
to refresh this here. I don't know why it's not
finally
getting me to where I want to go.
And inclusive
is there we go. There's Cooper.
Precedented.
Okay,
Mr. Cooper,
perfect.
You have 6 minutes.
Madam Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses, but given what is happening right now in the House, in the face of an unprecedented motion in which this Liberal government is abusing its power to gut committees to do their job, to hold this government to account, I want to speak to that.
Monsieur Cooper, je crois que présentement, on est en train de faire l'étude. Je pense que vous êtes en dehors du sujet. Je veux dire, si on a des témoins ici, puis c'est pas...
Madam Chair, it's my
Madame la
time.
Présidente, j'ai le droit de parole.
Before, have we had a Prime Minister, as part of a strategy, seek to secure an illegitimate majority government that he didn't earn at the ballot box through undemocratic floor crossings? That has happened. It's happened in the past.
Madame Nathan?
This is out of the scope of what we are doing here today, so
Actually,
I will get back to questioning the witnesses, please.
Actually, it falls perfectly within the scope of this committee because at the end of the day, this committee is an oversight committee. That is the primary responsibility of this committee. And what we are seeing right now play out in the House is a motion that the Liberal government has put forward that would gut the ability of this committee to do its job.
Please come back on topic, please. There was a point of order. I would like for you to come back to the topic at hand. We have 2 witnesses with us. We are studying the Lobbying Act. So I'm going to ask you to come back to topic, or else I'm going to give the floor to someone else.
This committee has an oversight responsibility. It's a very important responsibility. There are serious questions about a potential conflict of interest involving the finance minister over his role in directing billions of tax dollars.
Point d'ordre, Madame la Présidente, s'il vous plaît, parce que là, depuis tout à l'heure...
Point of order, Chair. Mr. Sari? I just want to perhaps explain or take a moment with this point of order. We have witnesses here with interesting experience, and we want to hear from them. Out of respect for these witnesses, let's ask them questions. The chair called you back to order. We have asked you to ask questions of the witnesses, if only to respect their time. And so, Madam Chair, for the umpteenth time, can we ask Mr. Cooper to ask questions on the study at hand and not speak to everything and anything else that is happening in the House? If we want to know what's going on in the House, we can look on the website. We are focusing on a specific topic. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I will invite Mr. Cooper to ask questions. If you're going to ask questions to the witnesses, that would be greatly appreciated.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. D'abord,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me here at this committee. We're neighbors, and but it's the first time that we're together at a committee. Chair, I'm uncomfortable. I've been here for almost 5 years. I don't want to say that your approach is authoritarian, but the member has 6 minutes. A member has 6 minutes for their questions. I know that you have to bring us back to order. Sometimes our preamble can be a little long, but we come back to the question at hand. We are, in fact, looking at the Lobbying Act. Generally, it's the official opposition that is chairs this committee. And so talking about an institutional change that could have an impact even in the midst of this study, it is relevant to bring this up as long as the colleague uses his preamble to ask a relevant question to the witness. I don't want to say that your reaction was a little premature, but I think that he should have the time to ask his question. He's an experienced colleague. I've worked with him in the past. He often comes back to the topic at hand, and you should give him a chance. Thank you for your comments. I will ask Mr. Cooper to continue with his questioning, but I would like to ask that you ask questions of the witnesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as I was saying before, Liberal members, as they always do, run interference to cover for the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister in questions around his potential conflict of interest, that in addition to there being issues around a potential conflict involving the Finance Minister, we know that there are serious questions about the most conflicted Prime Minister in Canadian history. There is an ethics screen that is supposedly in place, but we don't know how often it is triggered. We don't know who the Prime Minister is meeting with. We know that the Ethics Commissioner told the Prime Minister to stay away from Brookfield, and yet since the Ethics Commissioner provided him with that direction, the Prime Minister has repeatedly done exactly the opposite, meeting with Brookfield on multiple occasions. 2 days after the election, the Prime Minister met with a Brookfield company that was captured by the screen. On May 6, the Prime Minister met with the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure in Washington, D.C.
Point d'ordre, Madame la Présidente. Je suis désolé si je coupe le clip de M.
Chair. I will be cutting off Mr. Cooper again, and I am trying to give him a chance. I agree that Mr. Cooper is experienced, but I would like for us to come back to the topic at hand. We have talked about everything except today's topic.
About the Lobbying Act, and here we're talking about lobbying the Prime Minister, including individuals representing companies that were captured by the ethics screen. So all of this is to say is that it provides some context for the important role that this committee has in providing oversight and holding the Prime Minister and other officials in this government accountable in the face of what we have going on right now in the House, which is a government that is abusing its illegitimate majority to stack committees to shut down accountability, including oversight committees. And we know the important role that oversight committees have played in getting answers and uncovering conflicts, corruption, and mismanagement with this Liberal government, whether that be the We Charity scandal, the Green Slush Fund scandal, foreign interference, Winnipeg Labs, Arrive scam, and the list goes on.
Juste, Madame la Présidente, point d'ordre, s'il vous plaît, Madame la Présidente.
Another point of order, please, Chair. I think that, well, the member could go up 2 floors, be in the House of Commons, and his comments would be very relevant up there. I think he mistook the room for today's meeting. We're not at the House of Commons today. Yes, Mr. Shipley. Apologies, I can't see from here.
Shipley.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's all good.
I couldn't see, and
all
I think
here
this
right
is the
now.
first time
It's all
that
here.
I'm
So-
on the same committee.
Yeah, I just was in here filling in today, and I thought I was just going to be a body in a chair, but I can't sit here and let this go on without having a piece of my say here. And hopefully the clock is stopping because my good colleague here gets 6 minutes that he has rightly deserved. He's knocked on a lot of doors. He's respected his community, and he's earned the chance to sit here and speak for 6 minutes. I can't believe what's going on in here. I haven't been in this committee before, but everybody in here is trying to shut my colleague down who's worked hard, and his constituents are here to listen to him. For some reason, all the members on the other side have an issue with what he's saying. Perhaps just sit back and listen. Maybe you can learn something. But you're being awfully rude. Let the man speak. He's got 6 minutes to speak. It's his right to speak, and he should be allowed to speak.
Merci. Il lui reste 1 minute 41.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy? I'll say it in French. What's happening is exactly what we're trying to avoid. We don't want, or rather, the government does not want to hear what the opposition has to say. They're opposing themselves. They're not listening to the position of the opposition. Mr. Cooper has every right to take 6 minutes and to have his preamble. You have to stop cutting him off just because you don't agree with what he's saying. You have to listen, and you'll have your time, but he needs to have his. That's democracy. That's how it works. Thank you. Mr. Garon? Apologies, I didn't expect this to happen at this committee, but we do have a parliamentary issue here. Mr. Sari knows that I appreciate him, and I'm sure he appreciates me too. But we're not in camera here. Debates are public. Debates are televised. That's part of what Canadians and Quebecers have a right to see. And so when a colleague says something that we don't agree with, I'm just going to call back to order. I would appreciate for your point of orders to be shorter. Well, we can't accuse someone of speaking for clips. We all have our role to play here. The colleague has his role to play here. Saying to him that he's not on the right floor and that he should leave, I think you should sanction that, Madam Chair. We all have our place here on this committee. Thank you. Mr. Cooper, if you'd like to continue, you have 1 minute, 41 seconds.
Madam Chair, and I guess we're going to see a lot of this movie playing itself out in the coming months as the Liberals continue to abuse their power by shutting down debate, shutting down scrutiny, and that's exactly what the very purpose of the motion now before the House is. And it is why I wish to put on notice the following motion, that given that this committee is mandated to provide oversight of the Liberal government, the committee reject the government House Leader's plan to impose a Liberal majority on this committee, which Canadians did not elect, in order to obstruct the committee from carrying out its duty to hold the government to account, and that the committee report this matter to the House. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Il n'y a pas de débat, mais j'aimerais
There's no
votre...
debate. Can you send your motion to the clerk, please?
Merci.
Thank you. You still have 35 seconds. Do you have any questions?
On va commencer. Monsieur Sari.
Mr. Sari. Thank you, Chair. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I would like to welcome our two witnesses. Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Hurley and Honorable Joe Jordan. Mr. Jordan, you were talking about recommendation number 12. I would like for us to give a bit of context regarding monthly reports to cover communications with designated public office holders. These communication reports include communications that were not planned and identify the different elements of that communication. I would like to know how such changes would have an impact, what the daily impact would be, and do you believe that they can be implemented?
Through you, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Yeah, and I think this gets to the heart of your job as members of Parliament, because what that change does, on the heels of classifying you as DPOHs and bringing you under the Act, which is underwritten by the Criminal Code, no small thing, that change means that it used to be that the lobbyist initiate the contact. This changes it, so that if you initiate the contact, then it could be registrable. So let's say you decide there's an issue in your riding, you want to go and consult with a local company that may or may not be having a problem. If the person in the room might be registered to lobby and you start talking about something the government may or may not do, this is part of your job. You may very well find that on a website because that person has to disclose it, even though you initiated the contact. And I think members of Parliament need to give that some thought. Are you going to hand away that chunk of your parliamentary privilege? And for what reason? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And I would just caution members, if you're going to go down that particular road, take that, leave the initiation on the lobbyist. They're the ones that come under the Act. They're the ones that are going to pay the price if they get it wrong. By changing that one stipulation, you are essentially opening a back door to what you as MPs do that historically have been private activities in the wake of doing your job and your constitutional right to do your job without interference or hindrance as a core parliamentary privilege principle. I think that bumps up against it, and it certainly needs more discussion than we can give it here today.
Oh, what am I doing? We can skip ahead of him because, like I said, we were behind because this happened. This happened before. It looks like this is still block. I hope they give it back to Cooper or Barrett because Barrett's sitting right beside him. Oh, there we go. There's Barrett. Okay, let me scroll back a bit. A little bit more. Okay, this should be the end of the block round.
Being changed here.
Perfect. Là, c'est Monsieur Barrett.
Now it's up to you. It's your turn, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you through the chair to both the witnesses for being here, to our honorable former colleague, Mr. Jordan, who also I share the distinct privilege of having represented the greatest constituency in our beautiful country, Leeds-Grenville, now known as Leeds-Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes. And I'll just also quickly just express my appreciation to Mr. Jordan through the chair for his continued support of the United Way of Leeds and Grenville, specifically through the golf tournament that bears the name of my predecessor, Gord Brown, who like Joe has done like Mr. Jordan has done a great deal to support causes in our community, and I really appreciate that ongoing awareness and what it does for the people who are in great need in our community. So through the chair to Mr. Jordan, thank you very much, sir. And I'll ask my first question to Mr. Jordan. With respect to shortening the ban for former designated public office holders, how would you balance that with and that I perhaps inferred that from your comments if you didn't say it directly. How would you balance that with the need to maintain confidence against the perception of a revolving door? And because there is a pejorative connotation to the term lobbyist, and though advocacy that is done for organizations, I mentioned the United Way. There's an example. Someone advocating on behalf of the United Way. Are they akin to to someone who's lobbying or advocating on behalf of a petrol company or a pharmaceutical company? Is one for one the same?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the honourable member. I will say we could probably have this conversation at the Keystorm. I'm sure Dan Thompson would love it. But you've hit on another important issue. First, the idea that the United Way is going to have the lobbying capacity that equates with a multinational corporation. In fact, it's funny you mention United Way, because that was the example that was always used when the bill was put together. How do we strike that balance so that we're not over-professionalizing the industry? And I think we're dangerously close to doing that. That we're putting in place so much compliance burden that it's only people that do this as a living are going to be able to navigate the rules. You talk to anybody in that sector, the nonprofit sector, and they'll tell you that there are grants or applications for grants that they spend more money filling out the application than the grant is worth. And this is going to just put another layer on that. I don't know what the answer is, Mr. Barrett, but I think it's useful that the committee is cognizant of that, and don't make a bill aimed at the top. Make a bill aimed across the spectrum of the kinds of people that may or may not want to talk to government about a specific issue, because each one of these recommendations is a step towards professionalizing this so that the United Way has to hire somebody like me.
And having talked about the secondary issue in my question to the primary issue of balancing the need for that public confidence when you would suggest that there should be a dynamic application of the length of time for the prohibition on lobbying in post-employment.
The thing that I think Canadians need to understand is that under the Ethics Conflict of Interest Act, there's this very strict post-employment rules for people that are in a minister's office in terms of you can't change sides. They will look at someone's situation and you get a letter saying you can't talk to people that you had significant dealings with in that position for a period of 1 or 2 years. They also say that there is a lifetime prohibition on you using information that you obtained in that position to better yourself. Those rules already exist. Throwing another set on top and making it a 5-year ban, people may sleep better at night, but you haven't altered the situation at all. I think bringing those two pieces together and making sure that has the appropriate authority and whatnot, I think that's more than enough, really.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Saini.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan and Mr. Hurley.
Oh, hell no, we are skipping him. Oh, hell no.
With respect to the time dual reporting system, where
I believe that other
this is block
on lobbying.
We're going to have to listen to Hardy. I guess Cooper and Barrett left?
In practice, are things going more about it than decision makers?
Procurement, you could implement limited dual reporting there.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Oui, c'est vrai que ça passe vite. Alors, ça serait
Sure,
Monsieur
time goes quickly. Mr. Hardy, now you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us today. There are a lot of interesting things happening here. We can agree on the fact that lobbying is very important. Often, people who are sharing their interests know a lot more about it than decision makers or MPs, and so we need to be in contact with people who truly understand their industries and their interests. But I'll come back to what you said on the OECD. They were here last week, as it happens, and they said that we were top tier and everything was great, but we asked them a very clear question. Theoretically, we're checking boxes, but in practice, are things going that well? They said that they couldn't assess that. So on paper, we're doing great. But there are some limitations anyway. And earlier, you said that there is legislation and you have knowledge of the industry before and after. You shouldn't have access to information, but we are seeing things happen that could be a potential conflict of interest. And so when I'm looking at what's happening now, what would be, and I want to be clear here, what would be efficient and reduce red tape? How could we have a better control on lobbying We want to understand industries so that decision makers can make decisions for the best interest of Canadians.
To me? That's a big question. I'm going to default to my testimony in 2014, where I'm going to go back to 2008. I said, one of the problems I saw with this bill was the definition of what is lobbying is you could sideswipe a semi-truck through some of the loopholes there. That a better definition might be people that communicate with decision makers to affect outcomes. If that's the definition of what lobbying is, a lot of this trying to get at it through indirectly, which is a lot of what we're seeing with, and I'm not faulting the commissioner. The commissioner is working with the tools that are in her toolbox. But I think if we could introduce clarity to what the rules actually are, you've got a better chance of finding out if somebody's on the wrong side of them.
À ce moment-là, est-ce que si on regarde, parce que
lobbying on the one hand, and we know that ethics is on the other. Should there not be a balance in having very clear lobbying in one's intentions? And if there's an appearance or true conflict of interest, well, there can be penalties, severe penalties, so that people can be caught if they're doing this in a problematic way. And we saw that in the Maritimes, an air turbine project, and it was Liberal family members. It was problematic, and so we had to wonder, was it lobbying that was the issue, or was it ethics? And so we need proper lobbying legislation and ethics legislation so that we can properly spend taxpayer dollars.
I mean, I don't want to be part of a profession that somehow ethics is outside of. I've long advocated that the lobby commissioner and ethics commissioner should be the same person. But barring that, I think at least the rules there should be some kind of harmonization between what they are, because it's a little confusing. Since this act became law in 2008, there's been 4 people convicted under this act. And one of the reasons why I think that's a low number is because it's so complicated. The rules are so complicated. You've got the act, you've got advisory opinions. I'm sure in the briefs you find people complaining the 32 hours to 8 hours. That's a significant change. That was made through an advisory opinion. It wasn't made through this committee. It wasn't made through the legislature. It wasn't made through Parliament. But she has no other option. So it's the complex nature of it, I think, hurts its enforcement. And adding more layers to that doesn't help.
Pour 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can skip ahead. I think they probably, they suspend
the provinces have copied a lot of what they.
Understanding all of this means that you need to go through a business in order to have access to public funding. Well, we need to focus on this as well. And so my question is for Monsieur Routier. 99% of businesses in Quebec are small businesses, and a similar percentage in Canada. Is the legislation not so complicated that these small businesses are giving up on speaking to government representatives, and now it's only the 1% of businesses who are very rich who can pay for lobbying and pay for these lobbying firms? Do you find that the legislation is too cumbersome? I don't think so. There are different things that we can do. Firstly, and what we did a few years ago, is that we replaced the lobbying register to have a platform that was much easier to use. It takes under 15 minutes now to register. It can be done over the phone. It can be done in a minister's office as well. So there's the technology aspect of it and the practicality of it. In Quebec, we have 1,500 businesses and organizations that have active mandates. There are over 5,000 lobbying activities that are registered every day. and about 1,500 businesses who have that kind of mandate, and 5,600 lobbyists. And so we have a lot of small businesses that are registered and who report their lobbying activities. But I do think that the legislation can be simplified. I do understand your point of view. Legislation should be simplified. I think that we need to focus on relevant activities to the public. That's a bit what I said. This significant part of duties does not talk about what is relevant for the public. As my colleague Catherine mentioned, it omits that 49 hours. So we don't focus on the most relevant activities and the designated public office holders. That's the issue with that significant part of duties. And earlier you said something interesting. Lobbying in order to receive grants, that's covered by the legislation, but lobbying for receiving a contract, that is not covered by the Act. Do you believe that that's logical, knowing that this is taxpayer dollars that is going to be spent? If I'm doing lobbying with the federal government in order to receive a contract, that I don't have to follow the legislation and make things public, does that make any sense? I don't think it makes sense. In Quebec, if we're dealing with a consultant lobbyist or if it's a business, in Quebec, there are both, and it's 14% of these mandates that are focused on contracts, and so it's quite significant. It's significant for funding as well. So receiving a contract from the government is important, yes, for contracts and for grants and funding. There is a gap currently in the federal legislation, and it is an issue because there's no transparency for contracts when we're dealing with businesses who are carrying out these activities. And now, if I make the link between lobbying and ethics, we know that whether it be the lobbying or the ethics commissioner, they should have the opportunity or the ability to enforce penalties. Should the lobbying commissioner or the ethics commissioner, as soon as they note that something happened that shouldn't have, that there should be a significant penalty to deter problematic behavior? Is this something that we should focus on with those penalties? Yes, absolutely. In Quebec, we have an additional power. We have disciplinary penalties. We can suspend a lobbyist's activities if they infringed upon the legislation. Otherwise, we are similar to the federal legislation, but we can have investigations, but the federal commissioner needs to send her investigations to the RCMP, which leads to additional costs and delays. I think that it's very relevant to have a complete understanding. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Madame Lapointe from the Liberal Party, you have the floor for the next 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. There was a press conference earlier today that I was at with you and Mr. Hardy. I mentioned things that I should not have. I just wanted to say that. Now, moving on to questions for the witnesses. My question is for both commissioners. Thank you for being with us today. Your legislations, do they focus on grassroots lobbying? If so, can you tell me more about it, please?
C'est ce que je veux dire.
Do you understand what I mean? Ms. Carolyn? Catherine, rather?
Thank you. Yes, so we do have grassroots in our legislation, but it's it's a form of communication, and you have to identify it if it's going to be part of the way in which you're proposing to communicate with a public office holder. So we actually have a checkbox that says, are you going to be communicating via letter? Are you going to be communicating in a meeting? Are you going to be embarking on grassroots lobbying? And as you know, grassroots can use by any means, including ads, websites, social media. And it's essentially what it is to encourage members of the public then to communicate with public office holders directly through any means, including letters, email, social media, etc. In Ontario, only managing a grassroots communication is considered lobbying. Excuse me. And examples of this type of lobbying are directing a campaign, for example, making decisions about the message of a campaign, making decisions about the techniques that would be used as part of that campaign, as I said, which is to get members of the public then to communicate with a public office holder. Administrative work and research to support a campaign is not considered part of lobbying activity in Ontario. And if a client pays a lobbyist to manage that grassroots communication, then they must register as a consultant lobbyist. Finally, if in another example, if an in-house lobbyist manages grassroots communications for their employer, the senior officer may need to register that lobbying, again, if the 50-hour threshold is met. And that's a summary of what exists in our legislation.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Routier.
Thank you. Monsieur Routier? For the grassroots, or for grassroots lobbying, we don't have that as a disclosure requirement in Quebec, but it is something that we would like to see added. We have the registry that includes voluntary disclosure, and so that focuses on grassroots lobbying if it is used. Thank you very much. How do your respective legislations define moral entities and organizations, and how does this compare with the federal legislation?
Monsieur Routier, et ensuite.
Mr. Routier first, please.
Les personnes morales.
For legal entities, only a few nonprofits are covered by our legislation. The notice of the organizations are limited. We're focused on lobbyists and not entities, and that's one of the major changes that we've been proposing. The OECD mentioned it as well. This is something that we're looking for in the Quebec legislation, and it's also something requested by the federal commissioner. Thank you.
Aimeriez-vous répondre sur cette question-là? Oui.
Would you like to respond?
Just so I'm clear on the question, are you asking to compare what the Ontario legislation says about not-for-profits versus other entities?
En fait, les personnes morales et les organisations.
Legal entities and organizations, if your definition is the same as the federal government.
Thank you. They're all in-house organizations or in-house for-profit, not-for-profit. It is the same. The requirements are identical. So again, they're captured under the 50-hour threshold, after which then registration is required in the name of the senior officer. The registration must then list all those who have contributed to that 50 hours as being active lobbyists on behalf of the organization, again, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit.
Merci. Juste pour être certaine que j'avais...
Thank you. Just to ensure that I've understood correctly, in the 50 hours for your threshold, this is for emails, letters, meetings, and telephone conversations, correct?
Thing that meets the definition of lobbying, which is communication with an intent to influence, provided it is part of that individual's job and they're paid for it.
Merci, Madame Lapointe.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Next question Mr. Garon, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to both commissioners for being with us today. We talked about lobbying and public contracts, that there's a gap in the federal legislation and it's not covered. We are reviewing the legislation now. It doesn't necessarily mean that the act will be reviewed at the end of this. We're just consulting. But in Quebec, we have often noticed significant issues with our legislation on lobbying and with compliance, and we noticed that the most with infrastructure projects. For example, with the Charbonneau Commission, scandals in construction and roads. And now we have this gap in the federal legislation. And now we've got issues with pipelines, rails, high-speed rail, military spending, military bases, fighter planes. These are significant contracts. Is it not urgent to close this gap as quickly as possible before moving on with supplying these major infrastructure projects in the short term?
Commissaire Routier.
Mr. Routier? I can't speak to the projects for the federal government, but I'm speaking about the vulnerability with these larger infrastructure projects and gaps in the federal legislation. If you read the Gallant Commission report, that was raised. These major projects in Quebec with Cyclic, we noticed that there was no specific mandate awarded for Cyclic. In that context, public office holders and Quebecers were not informed regarding that major project, which was that Cyclic platform. As I stated, this is an improvement that is necessary for the federal legislation. There's a lot of influence that can happen in contracts. I think that we need to frame things in a smart way. There needs to be a threshold that would be acceptable for Canadians. And perhaps if lobbying goes beyond that threshold, then it would be more relevant as well. Framing lobbying needs to be based on the relevance of information for Canadians so that they can make informed choices. And a complementary question. Currently, there is no threshold. We have nothing. So it can only be improved. That's what's great. Do you believe that we should also frame that kind of lobbying for crown corporations, and, for example, Via Rail, Alto? Should it go that far? Perhaps you should ask the question to the federal commissioner. And these crown corporations that can be included in Quebec, all of the crown corporations, organizations, and departments, and we cover municipal organizations as well. They're covered by our legislation. And so the definition of lobbying applies in all cases. Thank you, Commissioner. Did you say that you support the federal commissioner having more powers, for example, carrying out an investigation and imposing penalties? Can you tell us more on the type of powers that can be given to a commissioner that would allow him or her to better implement their legislation? Of course. Having the power to investigate and concluding that there should be penalties is a good idea. We can speak to the director of proceedings, which is costly and takes a lot of time, and it needs to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the same thing for the federal commissioner, if I understood correctly. But we can also apply prohibitions to lobbyists here. No, go ahead, sorry. We are also asking to have recommendation powers, administrative penalties as well, and monetary penalties when there are activities that were not registered, or we need to have a wide range of tools in our toolkit, and this can be given to commissioners, especially when they are independent. Thank you, Mr. Garon. This completes the first round of questions. We're going to move on to our second round. 5 minutes. We're going to start with Mr. Barrett from the Conservative Party.
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Motherwell, which Ontario enforcement tool has done the most, in your opinion, to improve compliance? And would you view that as a tool that Parliament should adopt for the federal commissioner?
I don't have many. So there's not much to choose from, really, but perhaps I could give you an overview of what it looks like, and then you could have a sense of where there is a distinct difference between the powers that I do have under the Lobbyist Registration Act and those that Commissioner Belanger has. So I have the power to investigate potential noncompliance with the Act. I can open an investigation on my own initiative. I can take complaints from anyone in the community. So this means that we can take it all in. The Act is also very specific, though, about what can be done as far as the procedures and processes that must be followed under the investigation. These are very helpful. I can also then conduct compliance activities to verify information that is contained in individual registrations. And I can tell you we do easily in the hundreds, many hundreds of 300, 400 compliance investigations just to make sure that to validate the information that's provided to us. My office also cannot divulge any information on whether there is an investigation or make an investigative report public. The results of investigations are anonymously summarized in the annual reports. I would like to have some changes made to this aspect of it because I can only report once a year in my annual report. I would like to make that a little bit more timely so that if whatever reporting is permitted by the legislature, that it at least can be in a more timely sense rather than waiting potentially 11 months and 30 days until the next annual report. If I do find noncompliance with the Act, as I said, I can impose a penalty by making public the name of the lobbyist and publishing a description of noncompliance. I can also prohibit a person found to be noncompliant from lobbying for up to 2 years. These are the only penalties that are available to me. Like Commissioner Belanger, I would like to see a little bit more a sort of opportunity because, again, one of the things that was emphasized is, I believe in Mr. Jordan's testimony, was a lot of this is about compliance. We want to help people comply with the legislation. And so maybe what they don't need is to have their name published on the website. Maybe what they really need is some training. And so it would be really helpful to be able to have that in the toolbox as well, to insist or require that someone come in for half a day of training so they really understand the breadth and scope of the law, how it applies to the activities they're undertaking, and then they're fully informed. It's better for us because it's a better use of resources. Education is a key part of a lot of our work, and then it's also better for the individual because then they fully understand what where their breach laid and how they can fix their activities. Does that help?
It does. If we look at the potential to expand registration requirements, how do you think that we should make sure that the Act targets professional lobbying and not legitimate advocacy by charities, nonprofits, faith organizations that are acting in the public interest and sometimes would be even volunteer driven?
that doesn't mean that they're not trying to influence public policy. And as I said in my opening remarks, the key underpinning of lobbyist registration and lobbyist registries is to ensure that there's transparency about who is lobbying whom in government and about what. It's also about protecting government decision making. And so some of those organizations that you outlined are very sophisticated organizations that, as you say, have what you may believe is a valid point on influencing public policy. We're sort of lobbying content neutral, if you will. We're not really concerned with what you're lobbying about. We want to make sure that it's clear to the public what you're lobbying about, but it's value neutral. And so if you're lobbying because you want to get a contract for your company, or if you're lobbying because it's a very important piece of social policy that you would like the government to act on, we treat those the same. And so that is that is a fundamental underpinning, again, of the act that I am charged with ensuring is undertaken appropriately here in Ontario.
How much time? 1, 0, -1, -2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Saini, 5 minutes. Go ahead, please. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Saini from the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the two commissioners. One of the recommendations that the Federal Commissioner of Lobbying is seeking is immunity from civil and criminal proceeding for herself and her office. I understand that some of the other federal agencies who are reporting to the Parliament already have that. Could you give us your viewpoint on that? And could you elaborate how would that affect your office? Ms. Commissioner Motherwell?
I have similar immunity under the Members' Integrity Act, but I believe that this question is something in which I would really suggest be directed to Commissioner Belanger.
Maybe Commissioner Belanger could speak on that.
Do you want Mr. Routier to speak on that? Okay.
Please.
Monsieur Routier.
Yes, I didn't want to impersonate Mrs. Bélanger. Donc, écoutez, nous, dans la loi...
In the Quebec legislation, there are measures to stop someone from any kind from suing the commissioner, or gives them immunity. It is important in order to ensure the independence of the commissioner. They are responsible for enacting the legislation or implementing it, and so they want to focus on compliance, as my colleague was saying. That's what commissioners want to do. They want to ensure compliance and transparency. But there are penalties, and it is essential that the commissioners are entirely independent. And so they need to be protected.
The next question is for Commissioner Motherwell. How does the referral process to appropriate authority works under your legislation? Can you provide an example of referral that was recently made by your office?
Under the Act, I do have the power to refer a matter under to an appropriate body, such as the OPP. As I mentioned, though, everything that we do under the Act in an investigative capacity is confidential, and so any example I'm not able to provide. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on the cooling of period set out in your respective legislation and whether any exception exists that would reduce or eliminate that period?
Je peux commencer si vous souhaitez.
I can start. There are rules in the Quebec legislation. In our case, 2 years is the longest period of time. So members of the executive ministers, for example, have that 2-year limit. In reviewing the legislation, we would like to increase that cooling off period lightly. I wouldn't go beyond 3 years. That said, the 5 years in the federal legislation, if it meets its goals, then that's fine. But as a regulator, and after having spoken about this with designated public office holders, 5 years seems to be a long time. The lobbying commissioner in Quebec cannot limit that. I cannot adjust the time frame or lower requirements in the legislation. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
On va à Monsieur Garon.
Mr. Garon, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. It's very much appreciated. I will continue my questions for Mr. Routier. As politicians, we often meet with businesses and ministers as well. I know that in the past, La Presse covered cocktail parties for funding where ministers or members were present and people were paying to have access to ministers. How is that factored into the Quebec legislation? If there's an event that was organized and people must pay a significant amount to participate in that party, and they then have access to elected officials and ministers, do they need to register in that case? Is that considered lobbying? Paying in order to access a minister or a politician is not necessarily relevant for the lobbying legislation, but it would probably fall under the Commissioner of Ethics. And so, will the person who is present at that party attempt to influence a politician's decision? If those criteria are met, then they should be registered. The circumstances are irrelevant. What's important is whether or not somebody is attempting to influence the decision of a designated public office holder, which doesn't seem to be present in the federal legislation. Some colleagues talked about grassroots lobbying. We might sometimes think that the federal government might need a lower threshold for such groups because it might be difficult to register. Earlier, you also mentioned that the process for registration is simpler in Quebec. It takes 15 minutes. And it seems to make things easier for groups who have fewer resources as well. Is this what should be done to simplify the process first before asking everyone to register regardless of the size of the group or their financial abilities? I would say that that's what we have done in Quebec. Most nonprofits are not subject, which is different from the federal government and the other provinces. Only a few organizations are subject to the legislation, and I know that nonprofits don't want to register. Your colleague earlier talked about legitimate or illegitimate lobbying, and Ms. Motherwell said that doesn't exist. We don't look at the goals of lobbying. We can't judge that. if it's for the public good or not. And the public good, well, that can depend on who you ask. But I believe that if we want to focus on organizations who have fewer resources, we do need to find ways to allow those lobbying activities to be covered. As my colleague said, they are still lobbying. We can call it lobbying or advocacy. It's the same thing. I'm going to ask you a question. I believe I know your answer. We might have good legislation. Commissioners need to have a lot of resources to apply the legislation. Often we add resources after a crisis. Do you believe that lobbying commissioners in Canada receive enough funding? Do you believe that they should be receiving additional resources? I can't speak on behalf of the other lobbying commissioners, but I can say that for the lobbying commissioner in Quebec, we have an annual budget, and I believe that they respect the legislation. We don't have all the powers that we would like to have, and hopefully we'll get what we want in amending the legislation, but we won't necessarily require significant additional resources because we did a lot of work uphill with the registry, for example. For the federal commissioner, I can't speak to that, but in Quebec, they recognize the importance of the role played by the commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Garon.
Next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thank the witnesses. I had a motion that I put on notice. I'm going to move it. I move that the committee require that the Privy Council office to provide the committee on the 15th day of each month with a report detailing each time an assessment was undertaken relating to the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest Screen pursuant to the assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest Screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any department from the previous month. These reports must include 1, a summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered, 2, the record of the outcome of each analysis, 3, any records of discussions or consideration that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and meeting minutes, and 4, any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and other records of conversations, and the first report, which shall be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026, shall include the complete set of information for each assessment since the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest Screen came into effect, and B, order the production of the Prime Minister's travel itineraries and related records for all international travel he has taken since he became the Prime Minister that are in the possession of the Privy Council Office, the Prime Minister's Office, or any federal government department. These should include, but not be limited to, each meeting the Prime Minister attended and every attendee at these meetings, and these documents are to be provided to the committee in both official languages and without redaction within 6 weeks of the adoption of the motion, and it has been provided in both official languages to the clerk with the requisite notice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. The motion was put on notice. It is in order. Mr. Barrett had the floor. He moved the motion. I am going to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Motherwell. We've got just limited time here. Commissioner Motherwell, I want to thank you for appearing before the committee today. If there are any if there is any other information that you'd like to provide to the committee, please feel free to do that. La même, Monsieur Routier, merci pour
Mr. Routier, also thank you for your testimony today.
And I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett on his motion. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. And so it's a comprehensive motion, and it is to furnish the committee with information. These are items that came up during our hearings, our public hearings on the review of the Conflict of Interest Act, as well as in the fall when we were dealing with conflicts of interest related to Brookfield, the Prime Minister's involvement with Brookfield and his holdings. And it comes down to one of the core functions of this committee, which is about accountability. It's about providing transparency for Canadians. And we have an opportunity to, and I think that we actually got a reasonable response from the individuals who administer the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen, his chief of staff and the clerk of the Privy Council, when they did offer some PCO documents with respect to when the screen is when it's been invoked, and regular reporting of that to a standing committee for which the mandate.
Mr. Chair, point of order, please. Just want to know how long the committee should take. Quand est-ce que vous prévoyez que ça va?
How long is this meeting going to take? Would you?
Yes, Joe.
I don't understand your question. The committee was supposed to end at 6:30, at 5:30 rather. When will this meeting end? We have until 5:45. That is the resources that are available so far. I just wanted to know. So we'll hear from Mr. Barrett. I know that Mr. Sari would like to speak to the motion as well. Mr. Barrett?
Well, Chair, the option always exists for members of the committee who don't know what time it is or what time the committee started or what time it ended to ask the Chair, not on mic and not on a point of order. I don't think that would, in fact, be a point of order, but it is certainly on brand for the member opposite to have non sequitur interruptions solely for the purpose of being disruptive.
Okay, to the motion, Mr. Barrett, please.
Yep. So I think it's important that when we're in committee that points of order reflect the standing orders, and that point of order did not reference the standing orders, and so it was out of order. And I'll take the opportunity to identify that because it was disruptive to the committee, which is also contrary to the standing orders. To the matter at hand, though, this is important. This is an accountability committee. And what we're seeing is that we have the opportunity to bring accountability to bear. And we've been successful in doing that with accountability committees over the last few years. And many times we've heard from Liberal members that there's nothing to see here, and so that we don't need to discuss it. We don't need document production orders. We don't need to have witness testimony. And what have we got when we have had fulsome investigations, when committees have fulfilled their mandates? Well, we've uncovered corruption in government with the Liberal government. We have uncovered matters that have led to criminal charges being laid against government contractors when Liberal members had said there was nothing to see there. We've seen that there are ample instances where improvements to the rules and to the laws could be made. And that's, of course, very relevant when there are several members of the current Liberal government who have been found to have broken the very ethics laws that we review when we are discussing the Act. And so when we're looking to bring transparency and bring accountability forward for Canadians, and we have the opportunity to review the instances where a conflict of interest screen has been invoked or not, then Canadians can have an understanding when they see the decisions that the Prime Minister is taking and the meetings that he's involved in, which brings us to why travel itineraries are important. And again, you know, the refrain often from Liberal members is, well, there's nothing to see here, and therefore you don't need this information. Don't look over there. And certainly, I would say if there's nothing to hide when we're looking at the head of government, well, then transparency is critical, and sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the same members of the government today are government members, Liberal members, who have been involved in more ethical breaches than any government, than any party in Canadian history. And so it's pretty chilling that when the proposal to reconstitute committees has been brought forward in the House, and it was under the auspices of reflecting the number of seats that the government has in the House, but they're exceeding that percentage. That was their rationale, was that it should mirror or reflect the percentage of seats that they have with their standing on committees, but they've exceeded that. And our amendment that we put forward was to preserve the accountability committees, because we're not dealing with legislation. That's not where the issue has been. And in fact, if the charge has been that there's been a slowdown on the passage of legislation, or on review of subject matter, or on dealing with agenda items, at this committee, there's only been one party who's filibustered, and it's the Liberals. So we have, Chair, you could seek unanimous consent. The last time I suggested that, we had a special guest in Mr. Turnbull, who, before I even got the words out of my mouth, said that they were intent on filibustering it. But I do think that that this would provide transparency, it would provide accountability, and again, sunlight certainly does prove to be the best disinfectant. And if history is any indicator, if there's reluctance or a refusal to furnish us with the information, then we can infer from that that there is, another cover-up at play.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. On the motion, and I will advise committee members that if there's some digging in on this, that we can go till 10 o'clock tonight. We have resources until that time. So, Monsieur Sari, vous avez la parole. Commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Sari, the floor is yours. Thank you, Chair. All the better that we have resources until 10 p.m. because the topic at hand is so relevant and so important that we all need to understand exactly what the motion seeks to do. The motion that was tabled by my colleague across the way, Mr. Barrett, is a motion that, if I can qualify it, might have noble intentions, but I'm not sure about that. The motion is, if I could say, redundant. And I'll go through it. I'll go through everything that was requested, and you'll be able to see. And I read the motion, and I'm trying to see what we're talking about. The PCO needs to provide the committee information on assessments regarding the application of the screen, knowing that this is something that was already shared with us. This was done after Mr. Sabia testified here at our committee. I would like to remind everyone that the way that the screen is applied and the information that was shared with the public, and that we also received a letter. This letter came from the Privy Council office, and this explains exactly, word for word, what we have in this motion. It explains how the screen was applied. And, most importantly, and what interests us and what interests Canadians who are listening to us today, it's why this screen was administered. In this case, we're talking about the Prime Minister. This screen and the use of the screen is based on conditions. I haven't seen a single witness, not a single witness, call into question the process for conflicts of interest. If I look at the screen here, the Ethics Commissioner recognized here that the current oversight of conflicts of interest that was put into place in order to trigger the screen, and then we have a process to manage the screen, and this was implemented for the Prime Minister, and he said, the Commissioner said that it is effective. If we're saying that it's effective, perhaps I need to explain what it means. Because again, we're dealing with something that is redundant. For the interest of everyone here, to say that it is effective means that it reaches the goals that were sought. And my question for my colleague who has tabled the motion today, what are we dealing with here? If it is effective, and if these measures meet the goals, why then ask for all of the things in a motion that I am attempting to understand? Because I imagine it was written on the corner of a napkin at the last minute. I understand perhaps the goal, but the Ethics Commissioner stated that the system to control conflicts of interest and the measures are effective. And they are effective in preventing any situation of an appearance of a conflict of interest. So that's for the system that was implemented. And now I'm going to focus on these elements that are in the motion. There were a few things that we heard about today. It's important to know whether or not these measures are applicable. And the answer is yes. The Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's team, they applied the screen. And that screen was said to be effective, by the way. They were transparent with us. They said to us when the screen was used and why. They explained situations that led to the use of the screen. As I said, an assessment was undertaken relating to the application of the screen. We have that. The ethics screen, or the conflict of interest screen, was applied for the Prime Minister. Let's keep going. We're asking to receive information on the 15th day of every month. I understand that if we're talking about the 15th day, we'll have information on the previous month, and we'll have 15 days to produce these reports and send them in. Some might see that as more bureaucracy, but I do understand the 15 days. That said, I think that what my colleague does not understand, and what his team also does not understand, is that currently our country is dealing with a tariff war, and so our Prime Minister is seeking to create partnerships throughout the world so that we are not so overly reliant on the United States. And so what we're asking here, and I want people who are listening to us understand exactly what is being requested. So we're asking that any travel be included. Nothing is being hidden because all of this information is already public. On February 13th, 2026, the Privy Council Office, through a written letter, has committed and reached out to members of this committee on February 13th in order to give us details quarterly, so quarterly details on situations whereby the screen would be used. And we received such a report in November. And on February 13th, we received our first quarterly report. And so, this commitment was respected. But I'm asking my colleague again, what are we talking about? I'll come back to this morning's press conference as well. My colleagues talked about transparency there and the public's trust towards its institutions. That's important. But we can't forget that focusing on perceptions, hypotheticals, and trying to make clips, this can undermine Canadians' trust in their institutions. And I experienced this. I worked with young people so that they could trust their institutions, whether it be police services, fire services, the city, and provincial and federal institutions. But you might find clips on social media where we're seeking to get the highest number of views or focusing on sensationalism instead of facts.
What does YouTube videos have to do with the motion? Somebody point of order this guy.
Fragilizes the work done by elected officials, by institutions, by government in order to reach young people and people who are, less young. With this motion, we're sending a message saying that the government is hiding things. And it's not true. With this motion, we're saying that, well, maybe the government is not giving us all the information, and that's not true. What's not in this motion, and that's why I'm speaking right now, in order to say that I do not agree with my colleague Michael Barrett on his motion table today. I don't agree because there's a lot of work on transparency that was done by the government and by the Privy Council Office. Let's go back to February 13th, 2026. Mr. Barrett spoke earlier, and not once did he mention that we received the first report on the timeframe ending on January 31st, 2026, and we received that on February 13th. So we received a report in February. This brings transparency, clarity, and transparency and clarity. Well, that's not only given to our committee, it's also for Canadians.
Even the
We don't
translator's
want
just like, no, I
the application
I
of
don't even
this
want to translate
screen
this
to
anymore.
be ambiguous. Quite the contrary, in fact. PCO responded and gave us all of the information, and they explained in detail when the screen is used, and I found that to be quite clear and quite complete. And they are open to discussion. Seeing a motion after receiving the report is acting as though no report was given to us. I didn't want to say that that's false, but the perception caused by such a motion, well, it would seem like we're trying to hide something, whereas that's not true. I gave dates and facts, and I talked about things that were shared with us. What we have in the report, and I don't want to forget anything. So a summary of all the uses of the screen, we already received that. We have to say that we've received that. The record of the outcome of each analysis. If you want to have it on a monthly basis, well, not all files are dealt with in 1 month in government. I think that they haven't understood that across the room. Any records of discussions or considerations that are in possession of the PCO, again, it's not information that we're going to have every month. So there's going to be redundancy in that request. It's redundant to what we've already received because we'll be getting the same report because these files will be ongoing. The discussions will not have been concluded.
Please make it stop. Make it stop.
So we're
somebody point of order
asking
this guy.
as well for any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, incident messages, and other records of conversations. And the first report, which shall be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026. I would like to know how many resources are going to be needed in order to receive all of this information, which, again, is redundant because this information will be given to us and has been given to us. But now we're looking for details. But too much information is going to saturate all the information that we're getting. Now let's move on to the second bullet of this motion. I'm still focused, even though I might be struggling to find my words here. So, in Mr. Barrett's motion that was tabled today, in point B, order the production of the Prime Minister's travel itineraries and related records for all international travel that he has taken since he became Prime Minister that are in the possession of the PCO, the Prime Minister's office, or any federal government department. And these should include, but not be limited to, each meeting the Prime Minister attended and every attendee at these meetings, and these documents need to be provided to the committee. But you might remember when we met with Mr. Sabia and Mr. Marc-André Blanchard, it was a public meeting. We asked them this question. Well, I think that perhaps only one person in the room was here then and who is here now, and that's Mr. Hardy. And they told us that we would be able to have the information that we were looking for. And so, in focusing on this motion today, it would seem like we don't have all the information that we've requested, even though that is not true. You might understand why I doubt what is being sought here. Point of order, Chair. Mr. Hardy.
Finally, somebody point of ordered him.
Point
Finally.
of order? I just want to remind, or what is being said is that we're saying things that are completely false, but that Mr. Sabia and Mr. Blanchard are giving us the information that we're asking for, and if that's true, well, then they can just give us the information. We don't need to talk at length about this if they're going to give us the information requested. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Garand, another point of order? People can speak for as long as they like. We know how the game is played here, but misleading the committee is like misleading the House. Members need to think before they speak. Because if they're saying things that are verifiably false, well, that violates our parliamentary privilege, Chair. You are correct, Mr. Garand.
Expect that members will be forthright and truthful in what they say. I don't have any evidence to suggest otherwise, but I appreciate what you say. Monsieur Sari, recommencez, s'il vous plaît.
Je reviens sur les propos.
I'll come back to what was said by Mr. Sabia. For those who weren't there that day and who are here today, welcome. But we asked them the question, and you can go see their answer. That's all that I would need to say on that. I wanted to come back to point B. I don't remember where I was at. So travel by the Prime Minister and all meetings that he attended, that these documents are provided to the committee without redaction within 6 weeks of the adoption of this motion. That's another element of which I question the relevance. We heard from 2 people who apply the screen for the Prime Minister, and they responded to all of our questions. And now, regarding whether or not the Prime Minister should be made aware regarding the screen if a decision has not been finalized. If the Prime Minister is not informed or shouldn't be informed regarding the use of the screen, and to avoid any potential conflicts, that is something that we need to look at, because the Commissioner spoke about this. We are dealing with something that is redundant, Chair. We are dealing with redundancy with this motion. And there's a lot of detail being requested.
Okay, so if you don't like it, just put it to a vote.
We've asked for a report.
We've heard you 9 times.
And
so you don't
asking
like
for
it. You think it's out of order. Okay,
so many
put it to a vote.
Details. Well, all of those details might be less relevant. I'm not an expert, and apologies. I'm not an expert in the efficiency of the work that needs to be done, but I believe that this could slow the work of public servants who already have a lot to do. So I believe that it is redundant. I don't quite understand the goal of this motion, and we want to know what we're trying to say to Canadians who are listening to us. I am questioning how redundant this motion is, but I am also questioning why we need such this level of detail. I take issue with the way this motion was written. The goal, in my view, is not transparency. It's certainly not increasing transparency or building trust. If we want clips, I think you have clips. I think you've got a lot of clips. I think we've all gotten a lot of clips. We've heard a lot of things, and there was a press conference today even. I think we've got a government doing what it needs to do. There's a prime minister who Canadians have chosen to trust in Canada, in Quebec, and throughout Canada, and work is being done, and our prime minister is working hard. And Mr. Barrett is trying very hard to justify his motion, and experts have told us that we need to be careful in tabling motions or proposing changes to legislation or in the way screens can be applied. They cannot be subjective. They cannot depend on a single person. In Mr. Barrett's introduction, he was focusing on a single person. And experts told us that we need to be very careful. We cannot target a single person or a single incident. We need to look at how this motion would apply in the long term. It cannot be linked to a single person. And so, to conclude, I am uncomfortable with this motion, and I do not agree with it. I'm uncomfortable with the motivations of this motion. That's not why.
So get on with it. Oh my God. I'm getting so sick of listening to him. Honestly,
to be elected.
If he's going to go on like this for hours, I just want to call it. I can't keep listening. He's been going on for 38 minutes.
Proud to be a part of this committee.
I think longer, actually.
I find that this committee questions legislation and situations to ensure that things are done ethically in our government, but also to ensure that there's transparency for Canadians. And we are working to build trust. But what I'm seeing today is the opposite of what I would seek to do. I have a lot of questions for Mr. Barrett regarding the level of detail requested, which will slow the work
point of order.
our public servants who are doing
He's already said
excellent
this
work.
3 times. Point of order.
I don't believe that with this request, with this motion, it will really help them. It will undermine their efficiency and effectiveness, and we need to take that into account in tabling this kind of motion. I have a few quick questions for Mr. Barrett. My questions are as follows. Did he read the report from February? Has he read the report? In reading his motion, it's as though the committee hadn't received anything. The level of detail in the report, is that insufficient in his view? Is the report not showing the government's goodwill? Is it not showing transparency? If we want to table a motion very quickly, well, it shows a sense of urgency. And that's my question to Mr. Barrett. What's the urgency? Why table this so quickly? What did
Point of order, repetition. Please, somebody point of order this guy.
What triggered him to table this motion? Why is it so urgent to receive that level of detail? This is very redundant. It requests a level of detail that is excessive.
Point of order,
and
he said this 7 times
Mr. Barrett
now.
will take the time to reflect and perhaps change his view given the report that we received at this committee. Perhaps he can think about his motion and perhaps take the motion back, withdraw the motion.
That was painful.
J'ai un liste.
I have a speaking list here with Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair.
Oh my God, he wants back on the speaking list. Oh my God. Oh my God, Lapointe and they all want on the speaking list.
We just finished 17 hours of
God.
a Liberal monologue. My colleague spoke for 25 minutes in his preamble. Others have joined them. Phone calls were made, and we're going to restart this circus. I listened to my colleague closely, and I'll be brief. I want to defend the interests of Canadians. And if there's no transparency, or as we saw this morning during an announcement, the Liberals came to say that 20 of the 23 recommendations, if not all of the recommendations, would be denied, well, it already shows that things aren't working. So, there needs to be a representation from those who don't always agree with the Liberals. We're talking about efficiencies, and I'll go through my notes very quickly, but who thinks that this is efficient? We don't think that it is. We're told to stop asking questions, that we're slowing things down, but if they find it effective, well, then it's effective. So the only effectiveness can be a Liberal effectiveness. They've been quoting witnesses, and they're quoting direct employees of the Prime Minister. So I don't know how that can be neutral or fair for Canadians when the only two people being quoted since before are two people who work for the Prime Minister. So I think that we have a motion here seeking clarity. It's seeking transparency. We're Thursday night. We just had 2 hours of a committee meeting on lobbying where witnesses again told us that transparency and accountability are essential for rebuilding trust in our institutions. And now we're being told that we're being sensationalist, that Mr. Barrett wrote this on a napkin, and that we need to show the facts. We're asking to have access to this information so that we can share information so that people can make their own opinions on the situation. We're not asking you to go through the information that we're requesting. We're not asking you to tell us which information is relevant. We're asking you to give us the information so that those who want to criticize the government can criticize and ask questions. But again, Mr. Cooper was interrupted 6 times in tabling a motion, and the chair, who was not Mr. Brassard at the time, cut him off many times, and Liberal Party members cut him off many times as well.
Bonne question.
So therein lies the issue. For them, it's not a good question unless it's a liberal question. So you said that we want to have clips for social media, but you just had a 17-hour monologue. I think you'll have a lot of clips, as a matter of fact. So I'm not sure that's what you want to draw attention to. But when you hold the mic for 17 hours straight, don't say that we're the ones who want to have clips for media. You're obviously bent on being on TV. And next to me, there's a report. I'm not sure if I can show this on camera, but it's a StatsCan report that says that a fair amount of Canadians have access or have confidence or have trust in the institutions. And this is StatsCan saying that very few Canadians have access or have trust in our institutions. So I think transparency would be the first thing to do so that Canadians regain trust in government and in their institutions. And it's also being said, we're also being asked, where is the urgency? Well, we spoke at length about this. If you want to control every committee, that's why there's urgency. For the first time, a parliament has become a majority government without having that majority validated by electors. And we won't be able to hold government to account if that's the case. So that's why there's a feeling of urgency. So when will we end this? When there will be transparency. When finally you will be transparent with Canadians, with Quebecers, when people will finally feel that the government answers questions. Because that's our role. And I will conclude on this. It's not a question of liberals versus conservatives versus the Bloc. No. The question is that we have one of the best parliaments in the world, and under our system, we can hold the government to account, regardless of which party is forming government, and that is paramount. What we're going through today and what we're going to see in the coming weeks, because you've demonstrated what's coming down the pipe, the thing is that when you will have a majority on committees, we'll be interrupted every 2 minutes, as you did to Mr. Cooper a few minutes ago. So that's why there's a feeling of urgency. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hardy.
That has Miss Church, Miss Lapointe, Mr. Saini, and Mr. Hogan on it. I am going to suggest that the parties talk about this over the next couple of days, figure out whether there is something that can be agreed to. If not, it's up to you guys. But I don't want to continue this tonight, and I'm not continuing this tonight. So I will suspend to the call of the chair, and we will resume this. I did have resources tomorrow from 9 till midnight, but we will resume this Monday afternoon at 3:30. So this meeting is suspended till that time to the call of the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that he did that. They all put their name on the list, all of those 4 Liberals. Look, they even brought in somebody else as well. They were just going to sit there and filibuster for hours. Like, nobody wants to listen to that. So I'm kind of glad Brassard's just like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not. It's just, I don't want to listen to this crap. I don't get paid enough for this. Well, I mean, actually, they kind of do. They do get paid enough. But, yeah. I'm glad he said screw it. So we'll watch that on Monday if that's when they're back, because this committee's been quite interesting. And I'm going to go get a clip out on the channel from Brassard when, in the first hour when he wasn't here and Lapointe was the chair. I'm going to go ahead and get a clip of that, of Brassard speaking in the House. So, yeah, just check back on the channel in about 15 minutes up at the top, and you'll see his speech in the House from the first hour when he wasn't in the committee. So, other than that, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. We'll be back Monday for live streams, and yeah, that'll be that for the weekend. I will see you guys Monday. Have a good rest of your evening, good rest of your night, guys, and see you guys Monday. Bye, guys.